They just couldn't get it. They want to have their cake and eat it, and it's not possible.
There's a very, very low level thinking happening as well. It's like some guys are like, I'm gonna somehow overcome this. I'm gonna be better. I'm gonna be better than most of the population out there. I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna fuck women, and I'm gonna have children or whatever. Do whatever fucked up thing, and then I'm not going to be affected by it. Even though I've seen all these other people get affected by it, like I'm just gonna be that exception to the rule. Like I don't know what kind of crazy ego venom these guys are drinking. I don't know what kind of I don't know what kind of lobotomy surgery these guys have had. Um, because it's like pride. It's like, well, you can't tell me not to have sex. I've been programmed in my brain to want to have sex since the very beginning, and been told that from other people. I'm not going to take your advice. I'm not going to think about what I'm doing. I'm just going to do it anyway. Like, I don't understand that mindset. It's like
Well,
you are getting data and
it's
you're being.
sorcery. It's sorcery. And another thing that I learned, I used to look at things like alchemy and all of this sort of stuff. You have the sign of Mercury and what's the guy's name? Hermes, used for medicine and all of this other stuff. And when you look at it, it's pure sorcery. So when you look at the way some of these men think that they're an exception to the rule, and you see how religion was promulgated on belief and the ecclesiastical doctrines of hocus pocus sorcery, you're actually making something out of nothing. So when you see how the parallels are, when you see how you show a man or people, you say, just like the video the Shi-Nu sent out a few days ago when Tyrese was speaking about it, because this is what I used to say to many people. I came over to America a couple of years ago, and I was actually in Wales. I was in Atlanta, like Philadelphia, and I was actually going around like recording women and asking them, like, apart from your good looks, what else do you have going from you? And they basically, one said water, one said nothing. And then you show these men, you say, think about this. You've had centuries of thinking. And what makes you think? You've never had a man show you these things. You've never had a woman show you these things. These things are completely foreign to you. You're about to drive a car and you've never practiced, you've never done no sort of training before getting behind a wheel. How do you think this is going to work out when you drive on the road? They can't see that's the same way with relationships. If you've been having negative reinforcements for eons, how then do you think you're going to break the cycle? And I mean, these are the sort of things, but that's why I believe that is all part of sorcery. These people are completely beguiled, and you can't tell them about it. You just can't tell them about it. Yesterday I was sending pictures on my WhatsApp of like Moses in the Old Testament holding a cross, and there was a serpent on the cross. And then I showed them a picture of Jesus Christ dying on the cross, and I sent it to a few people on my WhatsApp. I said, how could a fundamental Christian explain this? Because Christians believe that a serpent is a bad thing. So how can they, and this goes back to what I've just said now with what you're saying, so I'm supporting it. It's pure sorcery. People have been, they're under this spell, and they think that they have some magic mushroom or something that is going to take it away. Give me a break.
It's delusion. I don't know. It's like delusions of grandeur.
Big time, big time, big time.
Like, oh, well, I learned a little bit, so I can I can go in, I can walk through that minefield, and I just like have everything memorized in my head. I know how to avoid all the mines. You know, it's like we're telling you there's a minefield there. You know, we know the location of 70% of the mines. We don't know where all of them are. Well, I'm
What,
going to
what,
navigate that minefield, even though I
what,
have 70% reconnaissance. Fuck it.
what happens is they step on a minefield and their leg gets blown up, and whilst they're in recovery they go, oh, this was meant to happen because it showed me
I
that
was
I've got to
supposed to
be.
learn the hard way. I was
I
supposed to
mean,
learn.
Jesus, what can you say to
Yeah,
that? What
religious
can you
people
actually
are
say?
hilarious like that when they want to, like, if it's kind of like the opposite of feminism. It's like if something bad happens, then it's good. If something good happens, then it's good. And it's like it's always good. It doesn't matter what it is. If my 2-year-old baby dies, well, God must have needed him more than I did. You know, it's always there's always a reason for like nothing basically, and they just like they're always talking about praying, and praying has never helped anything. But they just keep saying, "Well, just keep doing it, and someday maybe God will listen to you." And it's like, whatever. You guys are fucking idiots.
Yeah, it's like the have the positive mindset, right? Use positive reinforcement.
Yeah, it's like,
But it's like everything is awesome, bro.
yeah.
Like when somebody mugs you and takes your wallet, it's awesome. It's a
Yeah.
good thing. It's a good thing that just happened.
Well, that's the thing with religion and feminism too. Is like it's always good depending on the situation. You know, so like situations like that, they'll try to look on the brighter side. But then if a man gawks at their boobs, well, then that's fucking the end of the fucking world. You know, if they're in a hangout with an atheist, then the earth has come to an end. You know.
An atheist is a problem for the reproduction cycle because basically like the whole religion thing is just to reinforce fertility, like to have children and to basically prop up anything that supports making life. So basically it's worship, but it's about worshiping women. Essentially is what it comes down to. And it's just women are without sin. That's what I've learned. They're perfect. Little blue pill philosophy for you.
Yeah.
Women are perfect. They can do no wrong.
Well, they think that anyways.
Well, women are women are absolutely solipsistic. They don't think much outside themselves, hardly at all. A lot of men have become solipsistic as well.
Yes, I agree with that.
Especially like the religious types have become very solipsistic, trapped within their own mindset. They don't take in new data very easily. It's like trying to break rocks with a rubber hammer. Very difficult to do.
And I'm actually happy because of this, you see, because when I was growing up, I sort of knew that people were, in most parts, fucked. I knew they were, but because I had something called what's it called? I used to look into myself. I can't remember the word now, but I used to try to think, could you be wrong about this? Introspection, that's the word. I had a lot of introspection, so I thought, maybe I'm just being hard on people. But over the years and years, just looking at how people are doing contradictory things, they'll say one thing and they'll do another. So I just actually realized, I knew it all along, but now this is why I just do what I need to do. I've known what I need to know. I've studied from the school of hard knocks. I've studied some of the greatest that ever did it. And they say exactly what you said. So now it doesn't make any sense to me for me to participate in a world full of these sort of morons that are just completely and utterly beguiled. I mean, a lot of the things there, you can see how it's pure and utter brainwashing. They've completely brainwashed themselves. Like, a woman can do no wrong, she can say no wrong, even if the outcome of your interaction with it is at your detriment. This is why a lot of these guys, they're the walking dead. There's, a lot of the women as well. But and they're just full of, solipsism from here, there to everywhere, and it's quite laughable, because as we said, you've got to laugh at it, because if you don't, it's gonna just corrupt your mainframe.
Yeah, it's dangerous. It's dangerous behavior. I don't understand. I don't understand. Like, you could sit somebody down, right? You could explain all of this like negative behavior, and they'll try to argue with you. They'll be like, yeah, but you know, like here's an example. Like I tried to get a job at like a like you can't do this if you're male, right? I tried to get a job at like a cosmetic shop, but obviously that didn't fly. And there were pretty much all women working there. I think there were all women working there. Now that I think about it, I didn't see a single man working there. But a man, like there's very like the way we have things set up. It's relentless. Like you can't work at a beauty shop because that's for women only. And then it's like it's not that way for men though. Like women can infiltrate what's considered traditionally masculine, but men cannot interact with anything that's traditionally feminism or feminine or whatever. It's really crazy to me that we have crossover, but only from one side. So
Because men are
to me,
utilities.
yeah,
Women are human beings. Men are human doings.
men are robots. They're machines.
You're there to help other people. That's why it's so hard for them. Like if a man's homeless or a man went to war and he's came back with PTSD or something like that. That's why it's hard for a man to get any help,
To
because
recover.
you're a man. You're not supposed to give help. You're supposed to give help. You're not supposed to get it.
It
So
goes it
it's really
goes
hard in
deeper. It
society.
goes deeper than that though, because a man's not even really even supposed to have emotions or cry or feel anything. They're supposed to be ice cold.
Yeah, because you're a utility to them. You're not supposed to do anything, but your whole life is supposed to be centered around what you can do for other people. And that's in the society we have now. That's how you show how manly you are. It is how much of a utility you can be.
I mean, I was listening to this lady, and actually the night I was sort of talking to Shi-Nu online, sort of thing, and they were talking about the Knights Templar and what the Knights Templar was, and all of this stuff, and how these guys sort of worship Baphomet and all of this sort of things. From my own research of the Knights Templar and everything, and it wouldn't. I would assume that the Knights Templar, because they were an order, they were basically like the special SAS of Christendom back then and the church. I would I wouldn't go so far to think that these guys were just men and they knew the pitfalls of the society being controlled by the golden uterus to a certain point. So they started doing all sorts of things with each other and all of this sort of stuff. And they were basically saying how if you can do those sort of things, it takes you past the realm of this world. It makes you almost like, I don't know, like a god, or it just gives you, it gives you this special power to go beyond the sort of realms. And the reason why I bring that up is because for the most time, when you have family around you and they keep bombarding you with the same message of getting a partner, doing this and doing that, even though you can ask them, did it work for you? And the answer is no. Did it work for your cousin? Did it work for your sister? Who is this actually work for that is totally happy? And they can, you can't get one individual that does this. So you just think to yourself, well, if it didn't work for you and it didn't work for many people, why are you still ramming it down my throat? So therefore, you're going to have to be like a Knights Templar or some sort of guy, a MGTOW monk or someone that believes in a MGTOW philosophy to a certain point. You're literally going to have to go your own fucking way. You're just going to have to do it. And you're going to have to go through things that the average individual can't bring themselves to do or comprehend. Therefore, you're going to seem like an eyesore. But in reality, you're a god amongst men because you're not doing what these, slaves and zombies are doing. You see. But
Yeah, well, you don't have a slave mindset.
I mean, exactly. And if you're a slave, I mean, what good are you to anyone?
What good are you to yourself?
Yeah, slaves don't, uh, you know, start empires. Slaves don't get things percolating. Slaves don't do niche. And yet again, but people are just, and this is why again, I've actually stopped communicating with a lot of women because I know they're just not logical. There's a couple, my sister to some point is, but for the most part, they just don't have it in them. And there's nothing to debate about, you know. There's no point of arguing with, you know. I try to tell people, do you know the rules of rhetoric? Do you know grammar, logic, rhetoric? Do you know who, what, when, where, why, and how? Do you know non-contradictory identification? If they say no, then there's no point to talk about things, you know, because we're not on the same wavelength. We're not on the same page. And that gets them angry.
Yeah, anytime you ask women questions about anything that they've done or anything they think, that already makes them mad. You're not supposed to question them. You're just supposed to go along with it and believe it. How dare you question them?
Every time I get a chance, the women I do so, every second of every day, I send them pictures, messages, completely embarrassing them. You know, the one with yesterday, one of the female that I sent it to, you know, this pictures, I said, what have you got to say about this? Oh, I'm with my brother and my family. It's me, exactly. Typically typical, nothing. Because she's a fundamental Christian. She's a typical conservative Christian. Explain why Moses has a cross with a serpent wrapped around it. Explain to me. Nothing. Nothing. This is why I don't really take them seriously. Yeah.
Didn't Moses wasn't his staff made out of a serpent or something like that?
Yeah, right. That's another. Yeah, the staff that he walked around with. So, you know, I used to watch these films when I was younger with Charlton Heston playing Moses, and he depicted there that when he went to see Pharaoh, Pharaoh pulled out his serpent, and then Moses grabs his staff and he just throws it on the floor, and he just gobbles up Pharaoh's serpent. But also the pictures back then, or you see that he actually was carrying a cross and a serpent around it, and people were always like, and this was before, because this was the Old Testament, so this was Mosaic law or whatever. So that's the thing, though. But a lot of the Christians, they can't understand this. Most people couldn't, because it's at first glance, you know, they just go to church every week, they just listen, it sounds good. Just like when, I don't know, I don't listen to any feminists, but it sounds good at first blush. But then when you bring out the data, when you scrutinize the information, then you know, this is pseudo.
Yeah. Did you ever see the video that Thunderfoot made about Moses?
No.
He made a cool video about it. Basically, he showed how the whole story of Moses and the whole thing that happened was basically just him. He didn't actually speak to God, and that's what's funny is like the Bible is all like the number one person they believe actually spoke with God is Moses. And when you look at the story, he pointed out that the exact story that he pointed out that everybody was talking about then and put down in the story was him visiting a volcano. He went to a volcano, and that's all it was. His idea of talking to God was going to a volcano and going up onto the mountain where the volcano was erupting, and people were so amazed that he came down alive and didn't get killed. So that's all it was. And then all of a sudden he said, yeah, I was up there and I talked to God. You know, and then people nowadays still think he talked to God and he just went up on a fucking mountain, you know. We call them volcanologists, actually, nowadays, but I guess he was the first volcanologist, but he thought he talked to God.
And people like Jordan Maxwell and other people sort of brought it out, and I have a few books on this whole bit, because there was a thing there called manna from heaven, which is like magic mushrooms now, and this is the whole thing of Christmas, thunder lights, and you know, the names of all of the fucking reindeer, and like Santa Claus is supposed to represent Volcanus, which is the god, you know, god Thor, and had many names. And even Star Trek, they used to have, you know, the Falcon, you know, what's his name, was it Spark, and all of this sort of stuff. And you can, when you put everything together, you can see how it's so it's so vast, but not really when you understand that it's all just a story, and it's just a story that is to sort of control people's minds, and the majority of people will fall for it because the majority of people are sheeple. They're there to be followed. They're there to be led astray. So it's not really much of a big deal, but yet again, people still being taken, they're still being fleeced, they're going to church, they're getting on their knees.
It doesn't matter what leadership you put in there. If ego blossom, if you all of a sudden became like in charge of setting the standard, people would just obey you.
Oh, big time. Oh, big time. Why not? But the thing about it is, to a certain point, I wouldn't say it's great. I don't want to be anyone's leader or anything like that. But if there is a standard,
if you took that role, people would just follow you.
Oh, they will, because everyone wants a savior. They want someone else to do it for them.
Conditioned to follow. Okay, they've been beaten down. They've been told you have to obey us, or we're going to hurt you. We're going to whip you again if you don't obey. We're going to fire you from this job if you don't, bow down to women constantly in our presence, because we want to know that you're on board with the blue pill.
How do you feel about this? Do you think that's a bad thing?
I think something like this has occurred since the beginning. It's a very primitive. It's a very primitive thing to do. It's like a tribal thing. So
oh, yeah.
we're still working with very primitive tools. We should abandon some of them, though. Like, some of these old things are not that useful. I guess we use them instinctually, like kind of the way our brains are just primitive. Our brains themselves, like the traits that we inherit, the way we're being taught by our parents is very primitive. We have a lot of old ideas still stuck. We haven't evolved that much. That's the issue.
Well, what I worry about nowadays is the biggest problem that we have, I think, is with the Earth the way it is right now, and with people not, wanting to listen to what is going on. This is the first time in history, in human history, I would say in the last 60 or 70 years, where people have actually forgotten how to live on the land, and they don't actually know how to farm anymore, and they don't actually know how to do things that humans used to be able to do just 100 years ago, which is like, make wheat into flour, make their own bread from scratch and grow the plants to make it, and not have to go to the grocery store to buy the shit, to grow their own food and make their own stuff and live off the land and not have to go to like 7-Eleven and King Supers to buy all their fucking groceries. This is the first time in history where that's the case right now.
Wasn't it less than like 200 years ago that people could just like make their own? They could grow their own plants and make their own medicine as well if they needed to.
Yeah,
they could do whatever they fucking want. They had sovereignty over what they did to their own body.
Thousands of years, and we never needed all the bullshit that we need now. And now the way that we're being raised, and this is the thing, it's came on so quick. Like just 150 years ago, we didn't have cars, and now all of a sudden you can't get anywhere without a car. And then what happens when we run out of oil, which they're saying we're going to run out of oil in 53 years?
I think people should abandon
these
cars and switch to like bicycles with motors on them, because it consumes like a tenth as much fuel.
Yeah,
at least.
We're running out of everything right now.
And it's much more affordable, and it's not even being taxed. Like, as far as I know, there's no tax on a motorized bicycle.
Funny you should say that. I actually had a dream today about, I was over here, like, London, but I just saw this guy just riding this, it was like a motorcycle, but it was almost like a 3D motorcycle. But it was like, it was very simple. It just had one wheel, and the guy was basically right. He only had one wheel on the back or something, and he was just like, he sat on this bike and he was just moving through traffic. He didn't have a front wheel. And then I saw another guy.
Oh, I've seen those actually. I've seen those on the internet. Yeah,
Right.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Right, but the thing was, these bikes were just it was speeding past normal cars, and they were just like, I've seen these before, but funny you should mention that. But I don't. When they speak about this whole thing with oil, the reason why I don't believe that it's all running out, because when I was doing, my research into a lot of these things in the treatises, I came across a book, and I have so many, but there was this woman speaking about how she said in this book, it was written in the 1800s, she said from the information that they had then, that they can get gold from anything, sand particle, even an air molecule, that they can extract it and they can put it together. And this woman basically said in this book that gold and all of these things will be here long before water does. So when I read this, and I used to talk to a couple of my friends, I said, these treatises, people, we're talking about 900 pages, 2,000 pages, volume 1, volume 2. These things were researched. I mean, they're not messing around. So when it comes down to the old debacle, yet again, it's like this scarcity idea to a certain degree. But these booms and busts of oil commodities have been around for years. And then when I studied the whole thing with the stock market, that since as early as, I don't know, the 1700s, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but they've always been doing these booms and busts and commodity prices, and yet again, people keep falling for this stuff. Like,
yeah,
I think the scarcity.
It's not about the scarcity. It's about the fact that nobody is going to be able to find the stuff.
Do you guys remember the cycle
make
of
problems for themselves, because when you're trying to get the oil that is left, the stuff that there's still oil on the planet. Now, we're not saying that there's no oil. What we're saying is, to get the oil, you're going to have to destroy the environment so much that it's going to make it inhabitable for humans. Like when you go get tar sands up in Canada, they're destroying forest and they're destroying natural habitat for bears and all the other animals that live in the area, plus it makes it uninhabitable for humans as well. And they're destroying the water by fracking, to get natural gas. They're destroying aquifers, so now people don't have drinking water. So yes, there is many ways to get oil. What we're saying is, the oil that is easy to get, that we've been living on for the last 100 years, that we've been making gasoline and fuel with, that makes cheap gas, that you can pay a couple bucks at the gallon and at the gas tank, is going to be gone in 53 years, and pretty soon your gas is going to cost you $25 a gallon, because the gas that's left over is going to be too expensive. And that's the problem that we're going to have, and it's basically going to make it to where normal people, if you don't have a shit ton of money, aren't going to be able to afford it. If you can afford it, even if you can afford it, and they try to continue to produce it the way they are now, it's going to destroy the environment to where humans won't be able to live on the earth. So we can't continue to use it.
Yeah, I understand what you mean, and I'm not going against that, but it's like, when these average people can't even get their heads around gynocentrism and men being used and abused, they're not going to want to go there. This is I get where you're coming from, and this is the sad fact about it. Most people, they don't. You see, you're taking them out to lands that they are scared of. The allegory of the cave. The simplest conversations, they can't even get to deeper things. And I believe that most people are just they're thickos, which is not necessarily a bad thing. That's why they need to be shepherded around. They can't do it on them. They can't do it on their own. But people, I believe, are just savages. They really are. They just, this whole clandestine. You see that football games, all of these games. I'm not saying that people shouldn't go and watch sports or cheer their favorite football team or whatever. But yet again, they're just displaying the same old tribalist mentality, same old. But yet they class themselves as sophisticated. How? It's just how? They can't comprehend these things. This is what we've said today. We're not even going deeper into anything, but some people that will hear this, and in their mind, this is highly complex. How?
Yeah.
How? This isn't fucking complex algebra or something like that. Like, it's not. And even that wouldn't be complex if you learn the language and you familiarize yourself to it.
Yeah, I talked to some guy on another hangout today, and he was trying to make it seem like, I was talking to him about like how the Earth has only been putting out radio waves for like 100 years, since the early 1900s, and our radio waves have barely passed our own solar system, and you've got to go from what science has found out. We found like a lot of planets that can sustain life in the last 20 years or so, but the nearest one is so far away it would take like I think Neil deGrasse Tyson said like 25 or 40,000 years or something for us, just for our radio wave to get to them. Then once it gets to them, they would have to answer it and figure out how to decipher human language, and then they would have to send a message back to us. So we wouldn't even get the message. It wouldn't even get there for another 40,000 years, and then it wouldn't come back to us for like another 45 or 50,000 years. So we're looking at if there is some kind of life out there, we may not even know about it for 200,000 years. And the fact is, with the way we use our planet, I don't think human civilization will even be here in 200,000 years.
And this is why most people don't give a flying monkeys.
Yeah, exactly.
Because imagine if people could live forever. You soon find out that I believe that people act differently. Yeah. They'll act differently. They'll have to take responsibility. They'll have to do something. But because people die, they're born and die. This is why the same magi's or the magistrates or the magic men do the sort of things that they do. And to be quite honest, if someone wants to be beguiled and tricked, good for them. That's the way I see it now, because it's 2016. If you say you're intellectual, if you say you're the bee's knees, you're the cock of the walk, you're the dog's bollocks, then when something happens, you saw it coming. So don't cry, don't bitch about it. Yeah. You're a big boy. Wear your big boy pants. And that's my stance on majority.
For me, I'm vegan, and there's a lot of scientists and a lot of science that's going around right now saying that we're going to be completely fished out of the ocean in 23 years. And the biggest problem that they're having is not that. It's the fact that a lot of the environments around the world, because we're leaching out from the cows and all this stuff, we're leaching that stuff out into the ocean along with human excrement as well, and we're making dead zones in the ocean along with all the trash. There's supposed to be a trash pile out in the ocean somewhere that's bigger than New York State. So then they're saying that within the next 20 years there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. So the problem that we're going to have is not all of that. The problem that we're having is actually plankton are dying off. And when plankton die off, that actually feeds whales and things like that. But we're having a huge problem with that. But if plankton die off, they're actually the producers of 80% of Earth's oxygen. Which means if we lose the plankton, who gives a fuck about the bees? If we lose plankton, then we lose oxygen, and it'll be like when you're standing in Los Angeles, California, it'll be like you're 15 miles above Mount Everest, and humans can't live like that. You can't live with 80% of the oxygen on the Earth gone. And that's where we're headed right now, because humans are so fucking greedy that they can't see what they're doing, and they don't want to think, they don't want to use a little bit of introspection and think about what you're doing to the Earth, that they don't know how to take and receive and give and receive. They don't know how to take it, what they need. Humans don't do that anymore. We don't take what we need. We want it all. Give it all to me. And we don't know how to, like, if I'm hungry, I'm going to get a couple of fish and I'm going to eat. No, fuck that. I want 200 fish and I'll eat them all year long. So that's how humans are, and that's the problem that we have is greed, and it's gonna kill humanity. And it's not only about that. The scientists are also saying in the next 25 years that we're looking at a sea level rise of 16 feet, and that's if we stopped using oil and everything right now. We're still going to lose Boston. We're going to lose most of Florida. We're going to lose California. We're going to lose Louisiana is going to be gone. Lots of places in Texas. Most of the port cities. A lot of places in the world already have had over a 5-foot sea level rise. And that's right now. What's it going to be like in another 15 years? There's a lot of stuff happening in the world right now that people are just turning their back to and acting like it's not happening. There's people down in the southern hemisphere that have actually had to move away from their island because they've had a 25-foot sea level rise, and they've actually had the beaches eroded into the land 5 miles, and they've actually had to leave their island. And this stuff is happening right now, and people can act like it's not and act like it's all bullshit and it's all a game, but people on the planet are having issues right now, and it's getting worse. There's storms going on. There's all kinds of stuff that's getting worse and worse. Last year was the hottest on the planet, and it was also the worst for storms. We had the most hurricanes. The most destructive hurricane we ever had just happened in just fucking December, for Christ's sake. We had a 200-mile-an-hour wind, which was over 200 miles an hour. It was like 208 miles an hour, which it went to a category 8.3, which the scale only goes up to an 8. They never even thought it could get above 8, So, I mean, there's all kinds of shit going on that's going to get worse and worse, and people are going to find it harder and harder to look the other way and act like it's not happening.
Well, I think that, I mean, you make very valid points there, and as I said before, it's like if it does get worse, these people have been told, oh, everything's going to be okay. No, it's not happening. And so in their paradigm, there's nothing wrong. I discovered this with many people. You can't. The only time that something becomes wrong is when you go over there and mention it to them. That's why when most people hear what you're saying or what I'm saying, their first initial reaction is to beat you over the head with a massive rock, just to detonate you.
They want to preserve their feelings.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. They can continue to do that, but I keep telling all my friends, all the people that I know, is the thing that you need to be investing in right now is not gold. You need to try to think about how you're going to grow food, how you're going to survive if things go south. Because, like I said, if the plankton die, it doesn't matter what you do. You're not going to be able to survive. You're going to be able to survive if you have oxygen tanks, but the oxygen tanks are only going to last for so long. And once they go out, then human life, not just human life, but all life that is sustained on oxygen is gone, So, I mean, we can't lose the plankton. If we lose the plankton, we're fucked. And because we're out there overfishing the sea, and we're taking tons and tons of like, crap fish, like people go out and they hunt for tuna, and they'll grab a bunch of tuna, but they'll get all these other fish that they don't need, like sharks and all this other stuff, and they kill it, and they just throw it off into the ocean, and they don't actually need it. So they're getting a lot of these scrap fish, and they get like 25 tons of this stuff each time they throw the net out. So they're killing off lots of species in the ocean, and these are species that they don't want to fish, that humans don't really want to eat, but other fish do, and that's their food supply. So we're killing that shit off, and because we're dragging the ocean and killing plankton and killing all this stuff that we're doing, we're fucking up the environment in the ocean. And the ocean is like 90% of the fucking planet, and that's where we get a lot of our air and a lot of our weather comes from there, which is why we're getting much bigger storms. They're saying basically if there's a 2 degree Celsius sea level warmth, That's all. Just the sea. If the sea warms up 2 Celsius, that's enough to kill the plankton, and it's already at a .5 rise right now. You know, so it's not going to be much more. You know, that it's going to take for all this shit to go south. You know, and people keep acting like it's not happening. And you can turn your head all you want, but when you look at the science that's been going on for the last 100 years, you can see there's a progression, and it's getting worse and worse. And a lot of people just turn their head and go, "Nah, it's all bullshit." You know, it's fanciful, but it's not, because all you got to do is look at the storms, look at how bad things are getting. You know.
Makes sense. You know, cause and effect.
Yeah, you can't keep beating somebody over the head and not someday kill them. You know, it's just you can't continue to rape the environment and think like, oh no, there's just always going to be environment to rape. You know, I mean, there's only so much oil on the planet. I mean, the planet's a big place, but there's only so much oil, and the problem that nobody wants to address, I guess, is the fact that you're taking carbon. You know, we're carbon-based life forms, and the Earth has kind of like an equilibrium, and there's a certain amount of everything on the planet. It's been that way for years, you know, and it's kind of worked its way to this point. And now humans are disturbing that by throwing lots of carbon into the environment through vehicles and through planes and everything else that we are using. We're throwing a lot of carbon into the environment that was put into the earth thousands and thousands of years ago. So now we're taking all this old carbon that was compacted and put down into the earth so that it would be out of the environment, and we're bringing that back out and throwing it up into the air and filling the earth up with a lot of carbon monoxide and carbon, you know. And we're like, oh yeah, but it's perfectly fine. All you got to do is go down to LA at 7 a.m. and you'll see that it's not fine. You know, when you see like China, you know, on a 8 o'clock in the morning, you know, when the sky is so green and gross looking, and people are getting cancer and shit like that, and then you're like, no, that's perfectly fine. We're not doing anything to the environment, you know. It's just I can't see how people can see that and not think something's wrong, and not realize that maybe somebody has a point, you know. I think they're just like a lot of feminists. They just kind of turn their head and they just figure if I stick my head in the sand, that I won't see it, you know.
Just dig your head deep enough into the sand so you can't see, hear, or speak anything.
Yeah. You know, there's all these countries lately that have had a lot of problems with, you know, with earthquakes and tsunamis and hurricanes and, you know, tornadoes. You know, just a few months ago, you had like nine or 12 tornadoes that went through, like Texas and Oklahoma and all that shit, and it happened in like November or some shit, October, November, real late in the season for that shit to be happening. You know, and that's what's happening. It's the environment is really strange. You know, I remember when I was a kid, you know, back in the 80s, you know, it would usually, you know, start snowing around October, you know, mid-October, and then, you know, it would stop at a certain time. And now it's like, you know, even now, I left for 6 years, and I came back to Japan, and all of a sudden it's been raining for like 9 months here in Japan. Almost every day it rains here. It never did that when I was here before in early 2000. You know, so the environment is really, you know, fucking up. You know, the way the Earth works is basically it takes 25 years for the Earth to catch up to what we've done to it. So what we're seeing right now is what we did to the Earth in 1991. So we haven't even actually got to where Saddam Hussein set the oil wells on fire in Iraq yet. We haven't even got that far in the Earth environment changing. So we don't know if we've already set the pendulum so far off that we can't even, I mean, pretty much we already have, but we don't know if we've gone to the point of where we're going to be extinct, where we're making ourselves extinct. We don't know that yet. We won't know that for another 25 years, and by then we might have done so much other problems that, you know, it may not matter, you know. But we're already to the point now where we're fucking ourselves so much in the ass just because of our greed that people can't see past their own face. They don't seem to care about anyone else, their own families, their children's children, their family's children, you know. They don't care about anybody else but what we want right now. And they can't see that what's going to happen is there may not be anything left for your children's children, you know, the way we're going.
Well, the pattern just seems to be that, you know, the same pattern with brainwashing seems to be like you bombard an individual with so many different things that their minds can't keep up. So when it comes to like doing what needs to be done, that's just an almost impossibility. So from what you're saying and from what information I know of as well, this is going to drive individuals to more and more superstitious beliefs, or just to cut away from the real world, and they'll be acting crazy. And I mean, what is it, the hard question is, what can be done about this? Individually, most of us are doing what we can. I dibble and dabble into foraging myself from time to time. I'll make my own, prepare my own stuff. But yet again, you know, the ideas collectively, we all need to chime in and actually assist. And what you said is right. And most people, they just don't have it. The way I look at it, I think that society, to a high level all around the world now, people are just too far gone. They're just too far gone. They need government intervention to come and help them. That's fine. You know, we've had it from the Gnostic, you know, from times of the Gnostics, which I'm finding out some information that wasn't all too sweet themselves. They did a couple of fucked up shit, but it just seems that there's never been once in man's history that they've ever had something that actually worked, that actually saved people. It could be that the majority of human beings, as I've said before, are completely savage.
Yeah.
And that, you know, that's.
This is what's funny, that it wouldn't even take that much for a lot of humans to just completely die off. And all it would take is something simple as like the electricity to go out. You know, like most humans that live on the planet, especially in America, most of the humans that live on the planet right now don't know how to like do something as simple as find clean drinking water. You know, if the electricity went out and you couldn't go down to the local supermarket and buy a can of beans to eat, and you actually had to go out in a forest and forage for food, most people would die. Most people wouldn't know how to do that. And even if you did find that, like if you found an animal, you have to understand that, like when you find, like say a deer, you can only eat it a certain amount of time of the year, because you can't eat it when it's in rut. So you can't, because you'll get sick and die, and there's deer ticks that if you get those on you, it actually kills you. You know, so there's all kinds of things that you need to know about animals to eat them if you want to eat animals, which I wouldn't. But if you're like me and a vegan, then you have to know what plants are edible, you know. So I mean, things like that. So if everything, like if something as simple as like there was an earthquake and a power plant went out and an entire city lost its electricity, so many people would die because nobody would even know how to find food, you know. Nobody would know what to do. There's no that's an entire swath of humanity that doesn't even know how to make their own food. That doesn't even know how to find food, doesn't know where to get food, doesn't know what to eat, you know. I mean, that's basically what we've raised now. 200 years ago, it wasn't like that. Humans could go out into the forest and they could find roots that they could eat. They knew what plants you could get water from. You know, they knew how to like strain water off and how to prepare water and make it safe to drink. And you know, now they don't know what the fuck to do. And if something as simple as electrical going out for like 2 or 3 weeks, they wouldn't know what to do. There's people that have to bring them water. You know, they have to bring them jugs of water and bring them food and all this kind of stuff. And you see it all the time with the Red Cross when something like that happens, some disaster happens. You know, what did they do 200 years ago when there was a fucking earthquake? Did they have to bring them food and water? No. You know, that's a new occurrence. That's something that we do now. Back then they never had to do that. You know, even 110 years ago, if there was an earthquake, we might hear about it 2 weeks after it happened. You know, because the way, you know, we didn't have the internet. You know, that's only a recent occurrence. But now it just takes something simple like that. You know, something like, you know, a tornado or a storm to go through, and now all of a sudden there's no electricity. So now how are we going to eat? You know, that's the first thing that people need to think about. How are you going to eat and how are you going to get water? And the first thing they think about is, well, I would just go down to the grocery store, you know? And they can't, they don't understand, what if there's no grocery store? You know? And they don't understand, if there's no grocery store and you don't know what to eat, you're dead. You know? And that's as simple as you can get it. You know? What do you do in that case? And if most humans on the planet right now wouldn't know what the fuck to do. And that's the problem. That's where we lie at right now. Just 150 years, humanity has come to this, where if something happened, humans couldn't even fucking survive. People don't even know how. Lots of people don't even know how to like sew. You know, there's a lot of humans that are on the planet right now that don't even know how to make their own clothes from cotton. You know, like we used to do. Make their own shoes. You know, make their own clothes, make their own house. You know, it used to be like just 150 years ago. Guys would come over from England on a boat. They'd wander out in the forest, chop down 15 trees, and they'd make a goddamn house. Humans don't know how to do shit like that anymore. You know? And these are simple things that humans did for thousands of years, and now all of a sudden, just in 100 years, we've lost all that. It's sad.
I had a splinter in one of my fingers at one time, and I actually had difficulty removing it, but what worked is taking a needle and prying it out of my skin.
Yeah.
So it was a sewing needle, actually,
Oh.
which is interesting. What I did was just peel the skin around it and then pull it out. It's not actually that painful to dig around in your own skin, especially if you have a needle. You can kind of get between the nerves and shit.
Worry. Not really, but
No, not really, but it's less surface area as opposed to using like a cutting object. Unless that cutting object's like ultra sharp and thin, and I guess it's not as painful. But I don't know. I felt like once I got that splinter out, I felt a lot better. Like I did less damage by loosening up the skin and yanking it out rather than leaving it there.
oh, leaving it there. Oh God, more paint. It's odd, isn't it? Like just a bit of, you know, a splinter in you. The pain it causes, but as soon as you just get the needle and sort of scrape at it or get it out, the relief is just instant. It's just weird. It's quite weird. Awesome though. But yeah.
What do you think about that, Ego?
About what exactly?
About the people not being able to survive on their own now.
Look, I mean, it's a lot of these things that what can you do? I mean, me, I'm trying to learn how to like my next door neighbor, but they left, they've disappeared. Old couple, very old couple, who are actually living next door to us now for something like 35 years. They bought their property for, I don't know, maybe 20,000, but that was years ago. But
Yeah, that's
actually
nice.
taught me how to knit. But it's just like, where do you have the time? I'm trying to like start a couple of companies up. There's many things that need to be done to like, you know. So when it comes to, but at least I understand to a certain level that these things need to be done. But the average individual, you can forget about it, and you
Yeah.
can't really blame them. This is why I think to myself, that's just how it goes. I mean, it's sad to say, but
Yep.
that's just how the cookie crumbles. So like, there's no point. I don't feel sorry for anyone. I don't. It's not that I don't care, but I just see that most people don't care for themselves. So there's just no point. It's sad, but fuck it.
Well,
You know.
I'd bring it back around to the the whole thing that I think has brought us to this point is the feminism movements. The first wave, second wave, third wave feminism has brought us to this point because this overwhelming push for men to not act like men, to not do manly things, to let women take over, to let women do all these things, that has actually forced men to think they're actually being manly by doing really mediocre things that really have nothing to do with being manly, like playing football. You know, like you're basically a utility all week long, and you're a man if you go to work and you do something, and then you come home and on the weekend you go play flag football with your friends, and that makes you manly, and you're watching football or something, and now all of a sudden you're manly. You know, and it used to be that being a man meant you taught your children how to, you know, take care of themselves and how to do something in life, and you gave them some kind of you know, a way to learn. Basically, you were kind of their first teacher, and now that's kind of gone, and that that was facilitated by women, you know, wanting men to have less control over the children and women to have most of the control over the children. And from doing that, now the state has most of the control over the children because the children are always in school, and then the mother doesn't really want a lot to do with the kids, which is why right after school she takes them to ballet and soccer practice, you know, and then they come home and she throws some food on the table that's very unhealthy, and then tells them to go to bed. And then when they get up in the morning, she puts them on the bus and sends them off to school, and then she doesn't have to see them all day long. And that's kind of the environment that we've set up now in the last 60 or 70 years. And now children, this is like the entire thing is killing off everything that used to make us humans. You know, the whole thing of children learning how to be a family, how to raise children, how to be loved, what a relationship is, what friendship means. All these things are dying. They're dying off because kids aren't knowing how to even interact with other humans. You know, the kids nowadays, they sit on their phones all day long. You know, they got their cell phones in their face all day long. You know, they don't even know how to like have a friendship with anybody. You know, women and men, both of them don't know what the fuck a relationship is anymore. You know, they don't know what it means to have like a boyfriend and a girlfriend relationship. And now we've devolved into this third wave, fourth wave feminism where nobody knows what the fuck they're doing anymore.
Yep.
You know?
There's no point in knowing what you're doing. It's better to just be led
Yeah, that's
and
what they
to
want. That's where they
assimilate,
have most guys.
assimilate, have no personality, be completely plastic.
Yeah, that's what they want. They want the Borg. That's where
What's
we're
funny
headed.
about
Well, you have to be quote unquote normal. You can't think abstractly or do anything outside of the box. You have to conform always and forever.
You know?
well, it's funny like you brought this up because um, when I did my sort of like a little study into Plato's Republic, and it states there how they had the idea back then to for them to have like a different set class in Greece, wherever the hell it was, to have a elite and all of this sort of different steps, and they said that they'll have the sort of the canon father or just the lay people just have children, and they'll take their children and they'll give these children and they'll put them in these places where they'll be taught to be either like soldiers or whatever you have it. And they said that how they didn't foresee that human beings wouldn't tolerate this. This is they believed, they thought that human beings will just listen to what the elite was saying, but they found that the human beings will have an attachment to their children. But it's funny how in 2016 that people actually don't have an attachment to their children. It's funny how what you just said here, that after school most mothers will take their children to like ballet or something ridiculous. So it's like they want to have the facade of caring and being motherly or being fatherly, when actually the whole agenda from Plato and all of those guys, the elites of back then, is actually coming to fruition. By their hands, by these people's hands, are they selling their children? By special design, are they giving up their children, their progeny, to this hellfire called Mondi or whatever the hell you want to call it? It's just funny that the patterns in it are so funny, and it's, yet again, I still have a few books that I haven't got into, like things like this book called Bread and Circuses that I have in front of me. I haven't quite read yet, but they said this was the same thing that happened back there in Rome. That's why Rome fell down. It had too much debt. It wasn't doing this. Everyone was running around fucking each other, doing this, doing that, pure debauchery, women having their liberation. And I haven't read these texts myself, but from the different sources I gather my information from, they all seem to say that it had to do with women piping up and taking control of the society. Even when you look at the whole thing with Greek mythology and what's it called, the Spartans. So you had the Spartans. They were the only sort of group that men were doing whatever, killing and being a warrior. But yet again, everyone else, like you have the guy that came to conquer them. What was his name again? The Persian guy. Do you remember the guy's name? You ever seen 300?
Yes.
Xerxes. Xerxes. Right. So you saw how Xerxes basically came over from the world of Persia, and it was very, it was almost like an asexual guy that was just into all sorts of debauchery. And then you saw how, you know, flowery dresses and all of this sort of stuff. But if you look at it, and anyone ever does the study, you can say, right, this is when things started going down, because you have Xerxes coming with an idea of pure opulence, coming to a place like Greece, and it had a small group called the Spartans, who were just like fighters and warriors. And you can see how everyone else around them weren't doing what the Spartans were doing. And an outside influence, bringing a feminine sort of energy, just completely came and devoured the whole society.
It's all it's always taken. It's all. Yeah. That's all it's always taken is women. Women thinking that they've got something that, you know, because every time they talk about equality, they don't want equality. If they really wanted equality, that would be fine. But they don't want equality, and the fact is it's just a fact of human existence that women aren't as good at anything as men. The only thing they're good at better than men is making babies. That's about it. And having periods, maybe, you know. Other than that, there's not really a lot that women are better at than men, especially physically. When it comes to physical labor, you know, there's not a lot of women that could keep up with a man doing physical labor, you know, like hauling bricks or carrying wood or doing something physical all day long. They wouldn't last very long. They wouldn't want to last very long. That's the most important thing, is they wouldn't want to do it.
I actually want men.
It's just that they don't want to.
I actually want men to abandon all the physical jobs.
Well, they are.
Do this.
They are.
I won't break my back for a society that doesn't value men. I won't do it.
Now, guess what happened? Day before yesterday, I was on the underground, and there was this woman. She had a buggy, a baby carrier, and she was trying to take the buggy up the steps while I was coming down the steps, and I saw her and she was struggling. And I was just about to pass her, and this older gentleman said, "Oh, would you look?" Because she was pulling the baby up, and she was going, "Uh, uh." She was making it right. So the guy, "Oh, would you like a hand? Will you?" And, "Oh yeah, thank you." And I just thought, what a fucking simp. Fuck that. Fuck that.
Yep. You're the one that wanted the fucking baby, lady. You can take care of it.
Exactly.
I'm not your husband, and I don't want nothing to do with it.
Now listen to this message, right? So I was having a conversation on the WhatsApp yesterday with this female girl I used to have sexual relationships with, right? So she says to me, "Oh, I'm tired. I'm not in good shape today. I'm bleeding, and my head's, hurting me. Blah blah blah." She goes, "I'm annoyed because my friend is having a great party and I can't go." So I didn't say anything. I just gave her a thumbs up. She goes, "But I'm laying down with just a little light, blah, blah, blah." She goes, "It's hard to find sympathy with you," right? And she goes, "Later."
Good luck with that one.
So I responded, I said, "You're such a drama queen. You've been bleeding more times than I've driven a car and you're still not used to it yet."
Yeah.
And then she sends me a picture, like this morning, like laughing. "It's true, but still, you're heartless." I mean, babe, come on. You're like 35 years old. You've been bleeding since the age of, and you still want pity. I can bet you if men had babies like women, they wouldn't bitch about it. I'm sure they wouldn't. It's just like, get on with it. I've got a baby. It's coming out my testicles or my penis, whatever.
Yeah.
It's what happens.
Yeah.
But she wants like sympathy. No, no, no.
And I bet you if that did happen, that women would still try to be taking the kids.
Say that again.
I bet you that women would still try to take the children, even if guys had the kids coming out of their dick.
Probably.
At least if guys had the children coming out of their dick, they couldn't tell us that our dicks were small.
Well, I just think these. I mean, what can you do? What can you do? But guys, I think I'm gonna have to go to accident and emergency. I have some sort of I developed this sort of like allergy in my face. I look like the Elephant Man right now. I've got all these rashes on my face, and I've been trying to take these steroid creams, but I think I'm gonna have to go to accident and emergency and get some sort of a steroid shot or something.
That's not good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really like going to the doctors and whatever, but it's been like 3 days now, and like I woke up this morning and I thought, what the fuck? My sister's a doctor and she says, "Look, dude, just go down to accident and emergency, just get like a steroid shot and just like, bring it down because I've got a lot to do and I just can't be laying around in bed and just waiting for my body to stop attacking itself." So I'm gonna have to bid you guys adieu for now, and I'll speak to you next week or something. All right. I'll get back with some information for that stuff, Shi-Nu, midweek. I think. All right, dude.
Sounds good.
All right, fantastic. Have a good day. All right, bye.
Bye, Ego Blossom.
Awesome. Check out my videos if you can. Quite funny. All right. Ta-da.
Cool.
Bye.
Okay. I'm just finishing up a banana right now. Yeah, I don't have a It's good. What I actually started doing was I started thinking about you can have knowledge, but you need to be able to apply it at some point.
Exactly.
Otherwise, what good is it?
That's the thing I find a lot about the intellectual guys that are around now that go to colleges and, like me, I have a PhD and a master's, but like the things that I have it in, if something happened to the earth, there's really nothing I can do with a psychology degree and a music degree. I mean,
right.
A lot of these guys, they're very well read. They know about all kinds of like mathematics, and they're into STEM fields and stuff like that. And if something happened, then what are you going to do? A lot of these guys can't even fucking tie their own shoes. It's like, what are you going to do then?
Yeah, I'm getting into cooking. And I have a few other hobbies, but I have to clean my pan or whenever it's getting dirty, and because I've used it a few times, because I'm relatively new to the whole cooking thing. I decided it was better for me than just throwing shit in the microwave or whatever.
Yeah, it is.
That's too lazy. There's got to be a consequence for that convenience.
There is.
It's too lazy.
When you nuke any food, you kill most of the nutrients that are in the food, and you end up just basically eating tasteless water that has no flavor and no nutrients because you've actually nuked them all and they're all dead. You know?
Right.
So I never use microwaves. It's like the worst thing you can do to any food, no matter what you're gonna make. It's better to just throw it on the stove or throw it in the oven and heat it up than it is to put it in a microwave. Microwaves are just about convenience, but what it does is kill your food, and you may as well just be drinking a glass of water.
I mean, you could be cooking. You could be cooking over some kind of like an apple wood. Create a little fire and cook over that and have a better result than sticking something in the microwave.
Yeah, it would taste a lot better.
Taste better.
Yeah,
for sure. Like a cherry wood or something.
Well, like something that I think's funny is I'm a vegan, but I grew up as my dad used to take me out hunting, and we used to go bow hunting and shooting. And I've been a vegan for 27 years now. And I went down to my friend's place like 3 or 4 months ago, back in July, and I went to his place for like a vacation down in Hiroshima, and they had caught a pig. They caught a wild boar, and they were gonna cut it up and everything. And I stood there and watched them do it, and they were like, they had no fucking clue what they were doing. And I was like, what do you know? I watched them dick around with it for like 20 minutes, and they couldn't even like skin it. They didn't know how to get the skin off of it. They didn't know how to they didn't know what to do with like how to gut it. They didn't know what
they were beginners.
Yeah, they didn't know what the fuck they were doing. And these were Japanese guys that did it all the time. There was this Japanese guy that he gets paid every time he kills one, and they would take it down to the local meat place, and they would cut it up and turn it into meat. So he did it all the time, and he said he had chopped them up before. So I was sitting there watching him do it, and I was like, what the fuck are these people doing?
They need to sharpen their skills, is what you're saying.
Yeah, so I was like, I just told them like they had a ladder and they had a rope that they had brought with them, and I didn't know what the fuck why they brought it, because they obviously didn't know what the fuck to do with it, So I was like, here, give me your fucking knife, and I cut it, and then I hung it up by its fucking legs, and I put the fucking rope through its tendons, and I fucking hung it up on the ladder, and then I had one of them stand on each side of the ladder, and I just fucking cut the fucking skin and just ripped it off the fucking body in just a minute. And they were like, wow. They were so impressed, and everybody was like calling me the vegan butcher, And I was like, I cut off the legs, and I hacked it all up where it was supposed to be for the tenderloins and all the stuff that they wanted to be eating and stuff. And then I ended up cooking all the food for them and making it all and putting it into the barbecue and cooking all the food in a fucking pizza oven that they had, and they thought it was the greatest thing they ever ate. And then the next day I made like ramen the next day. And here I am, a fucking vegan, and I was able to do that. And these are guys that actually like to eat meat, that they didn't want to have anything to do with that when they watched me do it. They were like one of my friends that really likes meat and stuff. He was like, I can't, every time I eat it, I keep thinking about the pig, And I was like, well, then maybe you might not want to eat the pig, if that's the case. That's the whole point of being a vegan. It's like, if you had to do that and you couldn't do that, then why are you eating it? That's kind of the whole point.
Very interesting. See, I never actually have butchered anything before. I mean, I accidentally ran over something that jumped under my car, but we'll see. There was another time I found a dead animal. It looked like somebody's house cat. It was already flattened by a car. So I took it and I buried it in the forest. But because I don't like seeing someone's pet just dead and sitting there like out in plain sight, like on the road. That's like close to a city. That's not good. You got to get rid of that.
Yeah, well, you're just going to end up with some like hawk or something coming along, or a coyote or something. They'll just come along and eat it.
Right.
It's the circle of life.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that lives dies sometime, and after you die, something's going to eat you, whether you bury them or not. Worms and parasites and whatever will fucking eat you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, it's just part of life.